Hello, School Transportation Nation. Welcome back to the podcast. It's brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software, by Propane, the energy for everyone, and by Zenobē, making clean power accessible. In just a little bit, our own Ryan Gray is going to be talking with Joe Mascorro, TSD conference keynote speaker. She's an independent consultant with over 46 years of experience in the field of education. And I think she's going to put together one heck of a keynote, huh, Ryan?
Absolutely, yeah. Keynote, in-depth workshop. So we're going to be with her for like about 4+ hours on November 8th. So she's going to give us a little bit of a sneak peek about what she's going to talk about, as well as just the her background and the ever-expanding behavior issues that we're seeing on school buses and how to interact with them.
Yeah, there's a lot happening with the TST conference, guys. The agenda has been updated, more keynotes added. Go check it out, tstconference.com. If you haven't registered, you can lock in our early bird rate to save $100 off your registration. It is taking place November 7th through the 12th down in Frisco, Texas, suburb of Dallas. We'd love to see you down there. Make sure you take advantage of that registration discount. It's good till October 4th, so want to make sure we get you guys down there to get the best in special needs transportation training. If you guys transport special needs kids, this is the conference for you. So make sure and check that out. Ryan, you put together quite an agenda, right? You got any highlights, anything you want to give to the audience? Maybe they should put on their schedule if they're marking down what classes they should go to?
Oh boy, there's where to begin. I think obviously with Joe coming up, that's a great way to start the week. We have a lot of good stuff planned. Something new this year that I think I've talked about before is following up on Joe on Friday, November 8th. We're going to have this new overview of best practices for training your school bus monitors and aides and attendants. So a lot of concern with having monitors on the bus. Of course, we used to see that more prevalent before budget cuts really started impacting things, even going back to the 1990s. And then, of course, those are where the IEPs dictate those attendance can be one-to-one attendance. But been writing about this topic over the last couple of years. We've seen some high-profile cases of no monitors on the bus, really leading to some problems. And more school districts are going back to having more monitors on the bus, even when not required by a student's IEP, because it helps out the drivers. And we have this big, huge driver shortage, right? And that behavior, again, as I talked to Joe, is one of the top challenges that we're hearing from attendees and readers. And so attendance can be that right-hand person for the driver, because, again, the driver's main responsibility is to be driving. They don't have eyes in the back of their head. They can't be managing behavior. So that's where monitors are really, really important. Some other things we're working on. We have, of course, our evacuation training on Saturday and Sunday. We have our NHTSA training, of course, on Friday out at Frisco ISD, looking at technology, looking at the use of Wi-Fi on school buses that are to help with programs with students with disabilities. Just the list goes on and on. We're looking at, alternative transportation. There's a couple sessions on that. We're seeing a rise in that, rise in either these third-party contractors, non-school bus that school districts are turning to help with the transportation of students with IEPs or students who are experiencing homelessness. Also, a lot of school districts are adding these non-school bus vehicles to their fleets, vans, SUVs, whatnot, to transport these students. But there's a lot of implications that come with that. The National Congress on School Transportation next May has taken up this issue, really an issue that TSD brought to the forefront to the national stage a couple of years ago. And there's a column coming up in our October issue by our good friend Linda Bluth, who really spearheaded that. And she talks about that and getting that onto the NCST radar. So a lot of conversation around that, and tons of behavior as well, Tony, as I was mentioning. That's one of the big things that folks really need help with.
Yeah, Ryan, I was definitely looking through the agenda and getting really excited. Betsy Helfrich, our legal eagle, always provides a packed house, giving us the latest in case law going on in special needs, which is most definitely needed because everybody is curious about those specifics. So we definitely want to kind of educate the audience, bring the latest information to them, make sure that they're prepared for what potentially they need to be ready for any of these sorts of things. So they can come at them. Special needs transportation has got a lot of nuance to it, a lot of elements, and you just can't be off. You can't restrain a child improperly. We saw obviously some fatalities in the past regarding that. We see negligence happening, and it's definitely concerning. And when you look at the headlines on the STN website, once again in the wire reports, it's gun violence, illegal passing, student hit by bus, student hit by car. It's just constant, Ryan. And I mean, we'll dive into the headlines here in just a second. We have a quick message. Hey guys, do you know who Zenobē is? You may know them from their EV fleet space work, where the company supports over 1,200 electric buses and shuttles worldwide. U.S. EV fleet operations are now underway, particularly with school bus fleets. But did you know Zenobē is also the global leader in Second Life EV batteries? In fact, they're the only fleet electrification company in North America with a Second Life solution for EV fleet batteries. Zenobē is now identifying EV fleets and Second Life partners and projects. Visit zenobē.com/North-America for more. That's www.zenobe.com/North-America. All right, we're back. All right, Ryan, let's talk about some of the headlines I was mentioning on the website. There's some concerning things going on, and we keep hitting on it every episode, but I feel like more and more headlines are gravitating towards, incidents with students on or around the school bus.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's been several fatalities already this new school year. We've seen several high-profile cases of school bus drivers drunk behind the wheel with students on board. Some concerning stuff. The latest that we reported on last week, 15-year-old shot and killed at a Virginia school bus stop. So last year, there was an attempted murder at another school bus stop. I believe that was might have been in Kentucky. We had a report on that recently where that student who tried to perpetrate that crime was thankfully unsuccessful as being tried as an adult. We have this other case that just happened in Newport News, Virginia. This student, a juvenile, reported to be 15 years old, was shot. It was interesting. The police responded when they received what's called a shot spotter activation. I had not heard of that, but it's a program that traces sound waves that detect gunshots.
That's interesting.
So they responded to that. There were some kind of discrepancies there on if the bus was on scene or not. But certainly the bus was in the vicinity. There were obviously students there at the stop. So just a reminder that in the sphere of school transportation, so often our attention goes to what's happening on the bus or with the bus at the scene. And I've talked about this. We've talked about this over and over again. The industry, their fascination with what's going on with the school bus at the scene, but so much can happen leading up to the school bus arriving, and we cannot lose sight of that. The courts certainly don't lose sight of that. Defense attorneys certainly don't lose sight of that. And in any risk management, which looking to have a session on risk management at TSD in November as well, that, there's so many things that student transportation leaders need to have on their radar, need to have contingency plans for. It can be dizzying. It really can be. But it's imperative that transportation work with all the different entities in their district their vendors, their contractors in the community, their law enforcement, their first responders to come up with plans and really have sessions at least once a year, I think, where these groups are coming together and talking about, hey, are we thinking about this? What would we do if this happens? How do we help mitigate this from happening? Just another reminder, again, I've mentioned it over and over again, of just that vigilance for safety. And as we've heard from our friend Jeff Castle at the School Bus Safety Company, safety is the removal of risk. And, it's probably humanly impossible to remove all risk, but we just have to do the best we can to remove as much as possible.
Yeah, Ryan, I agree with you. I think that the more and more we see this, it becomes a situation where people go through the training, but how much are they actually retaining when the emergency actually happens? And also, we talk a lot about driver training, making sure that the drivers are doing all the behaviors, right? I mean, Jeff kind of preaches this as well. It really comes back to the fact that there can be a lot of small behaviors that are bad, but they don't lead to catastrophic or major incidents. They could be small incidents that don't equal anything, but they start compounding. So many small incidents lead for the higher percentage chance of a larger thing happening. So reinforcing positive behaviors, looking at norms, always really key when you're dealing with driver training. Educating the students as well, almost helping the parents too, because it can't fall all on the school bus driver and transportation. The parents got to do their job as well to educate the child on how they need to be influencing them on how to interact with the bus, be around the bus. Don't run after the bus if you're late. We see tripping or falling and then student dies, gets run over by school bus. That stuff happens. And those are all training things. Being able to step away from the bus a certain amount of feet, make sure counting the kids off when they exit the bus. Because we hear about it all the time, Ryan, student left on bus for a long period of time. These things just happen. And it feels like we're like a broken record because we continually talk about it, but it's because it keeps happening. And it's crazy to me that it keeps happening, but there's no end in sight. And I'm not sure how much technology you can throw at it before that it deadens people, right? It's just people aren't using the technology, or they're trying to circumvent the technology. And there's a lot of just inability to do the job, or as we saw from one of our speakers at ST and Expo East, they also have, blindness, right? You're walking down the aisle and there's a 200-pound special needs student sleeping in a seat. How do you walk by and not see them? Apparently, the biggest cause is driver has to use the restroom. Driver has to be somewhere. Driver is distracted, and they miss kids sleeping on the bus, and then they get left on bus, right? So there's all these sorts of safety things that happen out there, and it's just being aware, trying to be vigilant, to be on top of these kind of safety issues that could come up.
Yeah, absolutely. And something to remember is that in the grand scheme of things, these happen very rarely. But because school buses are so high profile, students, the safety of our children is so front of mind, these incidents make national news. And the attention goes to school transportation, school bus. Then everyone starts talking about the school bus driver shortage. There was a Slate magazine article a couple of weeks ago. I spoke with the writer for over a half an hour, and he used one quote from me that talked about that school bus drivers traditionally have been underpaid. Oh, that's true. But it just goes so much farther than that. And the implications of the school bus driver shortage and the staff shortage. We see it in the garages and the repair shops. School districts and school bus companies are clamoring for more techs. We see it in the office, routing, dispatch, you name it. And when there's a shortage of staff, what tends to happen is folks are given more work. Their responsibilities are added to their plate. And already a lot of these folks, a lot of them are part-time or not full-time hourly workers or salary workers for that matter. And it's just heaping more and more expectations on them. And that's, another topic that we have coming up at TSD, the expectations on school transportation and school bus drivers in particular. Joe talks about it in a little bit, the high seat backs now that we have on the school buses, and where school bus drivers, their main job is to drive safely, get the kids safely on the bus, get them safely off the bus at their destination so that they can go and learn and get them home again at night. They aren't behavior experts, the majority of them. They don't have time. They can't manage behavior while they're driving a 60 passenger school bus. And so it's those expectations that need to be managed in a better way, and school districts utilizing those monitors, utilizing more training. How do we move the needle? So a lot of things to discuss at TSD and in general. But I think it's important that the industry gets the word out again, just about the safety record of school transportation. And yes, as you said, Tony, these things happen. They happen rarely, but the media is always going to harp on them. So the industry and hopefully the larger school community, government, local government gets to know intimately what transportation does and what the challenges that they address, so they can proactively put that message out. And that's another topic coming up in our October issue. So just kind of see it coming full circle, Tony, in so many ways.
We've got some other top headlines coming in just a second. Did you know that school buses fueled by propane can help you reduce emissions in your community while saving money? Propane school buses have a lower average carbon intensity than electric school buses over their lifetime by more than half. And they emit up to 96% less nitrogen oxide than diesel buses. All of this from fleets with the lowest total cost of ownership. It's no wonder propane is the most widely used alternative fuel in the school bus industry. Learn more at betterourbuses.com. That's betterourbuses.com. All right, Ryan, I know we had some more leadership shakeups. Thomas Built Buses got a new president CEO, looks like.
Exactly. Yeah, that was one of two pretty big high-profile president and CEO changes over the last week. So first of all, as you mentioned, Thomas Built Buses, they welcomed in TJ Reed, who succeeds Kevin Bankston. Of course, earlier this summer, we talked about how Kevin moved over to become president and CEO of Daimler Truck Financial Services North America. TJ, also an in-house hire there. He has been a long-time employee of Daimler, left for a few years to go to Meritor and oversee a lot of their electrification efforts, their electrification development over at Meritor. But he has been back at Daimler, and he most recently was the president of Daimler Truck Remarketing and the Select Trucks brands. So he now has been tapped to be president and CEO of both Thomas Built Buses and Freightliner Custom Chassis Corp. So TJ getting up to speed there. He went effective September 9th. And it was interesting, Tony, because that news came literally right on the heels of a pretty big shakeup over at their competitor Bluebird. We recently reported that Britton Smith had been tapped. He was the president of Bluebird, had been tapped to go ahead and take that CEO position title at the end of this month. So Phil Hortlock would retire for the second time. Well, that didn't happen. That came out of the blue. We were actually working on an article on Britton's ascension to CEO for our October issue. And Wow, we had to scramble there, Tony, and change plans because Bluebird announced last week that Britton, he is out. So he has put in his resignation. I have some questions still out to the Bluebird leadership, but it said that his resignation is effective September 28th. He was supposed to take over CEO the following day on September 29th. So that's a pretty big shakeup. Again, Phil Horlock is remaining at Bluebird. He is once again the president. He had that CEO title, but he is once again president and CEO, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I suspect they're going to be seeking someone else to take that role. Maybe it's internal at Bluebird. Obviously, not as big as organization as DTNA, which is more of a global conglomerate where Bluebird specializes strictly in school transportation, really. So, but it's also interesting, Ryan, because there's a lot of new products. Say Thomas built buses, right? They've been hyping their brand new HDX, which is going to be built on the C2 line. So that we'll hopefully see that sometime in 2025. And they have their engineered, reimagined C2 as well. So they got some new products on their roadmap that Kevin Bankston had revealed some time back. And we've seen some press on that. So definitely some new buses cooking. And I know there was also rumblings. You never know what Bluebird's got and what IC's got, right? Everybody is kind of working on new things. IC actually launched their new bus at STN Expo previously. And so, we're seeing the CE series start to hit the street now. So it's definitely a lot of OEM innovation. I feel like it comes in cycles. It was pretty quiet for a while, and now I feel like it's really ramping up. And also, we've got the Cummins gas engine, which is going to be entering the market here in probably late 2025. We'll see when that actually happens, but we've been talking about that a lot too. So 2025 is going to be one heck of a year for new products, Ryan.
Exactly. Yeah. And, Thomas, Kevin Bankston, he announced before he left earlier this summer gasoline. So we'll see, with Thomas built buses, will they be leaning in on that new Cummins offering that you just mentioned, late 25 limited production? That's what they're saying now, 2026 full production. That's been moved back a couple times. So we'll see how that happens. But certainly I think that with that innovation, a couple things are at play. The supply chain has been improving. It's still, there's always going to be some supply chain issues. We're always going to have some kind of constraints somewhere along the line. But I think that we see that improving things, a lot of investment in manufacturing. Certainly in terms of both Cummins and Bluebird, they just got a pretty big award from the Department of Energy over the summer for their manufacturing. Bluebird is developing a new dedicated Type D plant, especially for electrification. So we've seen a lot of Type D electric buses come onto the scene over the last couple of years, but not from the main three U.S. Manufacturers. We've seen it from the likes of BYD or RIDE, as they're now referred to, or Green Power Motor Company. So I think we're going to see a lot more innovations in that Type D space, and that's likely with already with that Bluebird manufacturing plant that we've seen, and it's interesting because Britton Smith at Bluebird drove a lot of those innovations, and of course we've talked about the standard seatbelts, lap shoulder seatbelts on school buses, and the driver airbags, and some other safety tech. So a lot of that improving of the supply chain, a lot of that manufacturing investment that we've seen over the last several years coming from the Inflation Reduction Act. So definitely it's going to be fun to see what transpires over the coming 12 months.
Yeah, another big thing, Ryan, was the presidential debate, Kamala Harris v. Donald Trump. So we will see what that looks like. We'll know not far off, couple months, November. It's going to be interesting because I think a lot of what you're just talking about with new product innovation, also we have to think about if Kamala gets in, probably more regulation, probably more green energy that continues to proliferate. Definitely, I saw some investment news from Jefferies suggesting that if Kamala wins, government fleet electrification is going to be one of the top priorities. And then if Trump ends up winning, we'll probably see regulation roll back and we'll see a deceleration in potentially electrification. I think these things are going to have big implications on really, do we see the continued growth of electric school buses at the rate it's growing now? So it will be interesting to see how it all plays out, but definitely keeping a very close eye on the upcoming election between the two candidates.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the electrification, I mean, we knew that the EPA Clean School Bus Program, I mean, the sunset is on the horizon. For that program, funding through fiscal year 2026. So we're basically halfway through that program. And, this stuff costs money. And where's it going to come from? I mean, the $3+ trillion that came out just of the IIJA and then the IRA, that's been a colossal investment. And where is that money going to come from going forward? And I think that when we're looking at the choice between Harris or Trump, yes, there's still a lot of policy detail across the board from both candidates that we need to know. And right, when we're in an election year, there's a lot of promises made, and then whoever wins, once they get in office, becomes an uphill climb for a lot of those promises to come to fruition. We have Congress. We don't know how the congressional race is going to wrap up. I think even more importantly than the presidential election, how is the congressional race going to play out? And certainly too, politics is local. We can't lose sight of what's going on in our local communities, our states. So certainly turn out and vote, I think, is the big thing. Get out there and learn about also too what's happening in your local neck of the woods. How is your local community ballots or state propositions or whatnot impacting manufacturing, impacting funding, property taxes? There's a lot at play here. But I think that, again, when we're looking at the choice between Harris or Trump, it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? I mean, on one hand, yes, Harris brings the promise of more green energy, more electric school buses, and certainly that's good for the electric school bus manufacturers, the powertrain and battery suppliers. But also, too, on the flip side, we're seeing a lot of pushback from school districts on adopting electric. There's some mandates at play in New York State. I talk to New York transportation leaders all the time, and my biggest question is, how are you guys wrapping your head around complying with this mandate 2027 to start only buying electric? And there's still a lot going on there, and I don't think that has completely been solidified in terms of that law. I think we might see some changes to it, especially, again, once the election plays out, and not necessarily just Harris or Trump, but how does the state legislation get impacted?
I had actually a school district this week reach out to me and ask me, hey, can you tell me more about electric buses? Because they just don't work for me for field trips. And this gentleman was in California, which there's obviously a big move towards electrification, kind of like New York. And he was like, I'm trying to tell my leaders that an 80-mile range electric school bus just isn't going to work for us. There's no place for me to charge at another school site that doesn't have electric. It just doesn't work for the application. And I just can't get it through their heads why. And he made the recommendation, hey, look, if I could put a charger, or if the other school could put a charger at their site that I could charge my bus at, then maybe every school puts in a charger for athletic trips. So each school district could charge at the other school's charging facility or charger. So it's an interesting idea. But that takes time, that takes money, that takes planning, and it could be possible. But man, it is like you got to get everybody in lockstep to get something like that in place. And it doesn't happen overnight. So this particular gentleman at this school district was like, look, we need to have a diesel bus. We need to have a gas bus that's going to be able to serve the athletic teams before this. It's not an all or nothing game, but they're trying to move to this all electric fleet in California at this one particular district. And different opinions are affected. An operator is seeing it one way, administration is seeing it another way. At the end of the day, the operator's got to run the buses. And if they don't do the job they were meant to do, what's the point? So I think to your point, Ryan, that there is room for every type of fuel type out there. It's just what is the right fit for your particular district, your topography, your weather conditions. As we've seen in cold weather states, propane makes a lot of sense, right? Minnesota, Wisconsin, some of these other places. But I mean, on the flip side, some people will say, well, electric will work in those cold environments. Yeah, it will work. But will it have diminished battery capacity? The mileage won't be as good because you're running your heaters. So there are trade-offs with these sorts of things. With propane, the cost per gallon is a lot less, but you use more fuel. So you have to run the numbers. You have to see where it makes financial and fiscal sense for your district. What is the right fuel source for you? Don't do it because that's the way we've always done it. Do your homework. Do your due diligence. Conferences like STN Expo, we unpack a lot of this information and provide you a lot of resources and a lot of thought leadership from people that are using different fuel sources for you to make your own judgment, for you to make your own assessment. That's what STN does, right? We don't tell you should buy this or you should buy that. We want to inform you about what's happening in the market and you make the choice, chocolate or vanilla, right? What's the right flavor for my district? Maybe it's both. Maybe you like Neapolitan. I don't know. But, I think we definitely see a mix out there of choice, Ryan. But when someone's being regulated to the point where they're like, you have to buy this, people don't like that. That is not a favorable way to look at it. I want to have a choice. I want to be just told you got to do this and it's all or nothing. That's a hard decision to make for a school district. Mm-hmm. All right, guys, we are going to get to the interview right after a quick break. Hey guys, what do software, hardware, and safety have in common? One word: TransFinder. At the STN Expo in Reno, TransFinder won 3 Innovation Choice Awards voted on by STN Expo attendees for best software, best hardware, best safety technology. TransFinder's Route Finder plus routing solution and apps, Stop Finder and Wayfinder, are well known in the industry. Not everyone realizes TransFinder provides hardware like card readers, tablets, and mounts. And as for safety, Patrol Finder for schools is TransFinder's latest solution designed to make buses and campuses safer. TransFinder's president and CEO, Antonio Civitella, said the recognition means so much because it's voted on by STN Expo attendees. Civitella said, we know a lot is riding on TransFinder because a lot is riding on those yellow buses that travel through our communities. TransFinder must continue to innovate as more is being expected of transportation departments from district leadership as well as parents. Learn more at transfinder.com. That's transfinder.com.
All right, let's welcome to the School Transportation Nation stage for the first time, Jo Mascorro. She is our lead keynote and workshop presenter for TSD conference in November. Jo, thanks so much for joining us. It's great to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you. What a blessing and an opportunity to return. I was trying to figure out how many years it's been. I know it's been in the double digits. So I am glad to be back, and I hope we have a great conference. I'm looking forward to it, and that you find the information valuable that I share down the road.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to it. And as you mentioned, you are a return speaker to TSD. So the last time we had you was in 2018. Of course, pre-pandemic, a lot has changed since then. And we're going to definitely get into that because your background and expertise is in behavior. And that is top one or two challenges that we're hearing from our attendees, from our readers of school transportation news. The prevalence of the different disabilities in terms of diagnoses, autism, other cognitive or behavioral challenges that kids are having. So we're just kind of seeing that really go through the roof. But you also, before STN acquired TSD Conference from our dear friend Roseanne Schwaderer, we were talking earlier. This will be your third keynote, I believe, at TSD, and I think your first one, you were trying to remember, like you said, it goes back, maybe
way back, yes,
15, 20 years or so, because I think we're now in like 30 plus years of TSD Conference.
Right.
So it's been a while, but I want to talk about to your background. So for the folks who haven't seen you, haven't read about you, tell everybody, who is Joe Mascorro? What is your specialty? And how did you get involved in behavior?
Well, I am an independent consultant and have been now going on 34 years this upcoming January. I've been in education for going on to my 46th year, which is interesting because a lot of folks tend to depart in the 30 to 35 years. So my quest is to let people know I'm neither retired or dead. And so
that's good. Yes.
Post-COVID. But my career began, I'm a certified teacher, actually, in deaf ed. I'm a Texas Tech grad, and I had my early years in education as a teacher of the deaf and general ed. Very early in my career, it was fascinating to me that I became involved in a program that worked with children who experienced severe deaf blindness. It was a lifetime opportunity at a very young age to help develop a program and write curriculum. Basically, it didn't exist, and we had to put it together, and then we did well with it. After 3 years, the feds decided we should expand it to working with children with behavior disorders. So the moral of the story is I had an opportunity to not only work with kids with severe, profound disabilities as well as behavior challenges, I also got to live with them and write curriculum and really do a 24/7 living experience as well as an education experience. That taught me very early on in my career about behaviors and the challenges that exist. And because I was so young, do you remember, Ryan, when we were so brilliant back in the day? You're young and you just, the mountain is there and you're going to conquer that summit, right? So I was a little more brazen about questioning things and challenging techniques and such, and all of it being based on really about the dignity and respect for whoever was going through some kind of challenge. I learned early on that sometimes the paperwork didn't match what I perceived that student's ability to do. I was allowed to be exposed in my career to a number of individuals who really got me on a track of how to be respectful while trying to intervene on these particular challenges. And over time, I don't know how the behavior thing came to be. It just sort of did. When my job ended, because the facility I was working in needed a behavior specialist. I honestly believe they just took a vote and figured I'd been through the ringer so much, I'd probably be a good candidate for that job. I was their first behavior specialist, and my quest to write plans and be more involved in that track sort of started there and never looked back. And to this day, I tend to be the one who gets the calls when it's hit the fan, when a lot of opportunities have been utilized and they're not feeling productive or effective, or honestly, when there's litigation or potential litigation involved. And for some reason, my sort of what I perceive to be outside the box applications tend to help a little bit. And I continue to do that. I love my job. It's difficult. So I cry as much as I, thank goodness for the opportunity. But as you know, and I'm sure as you've heard, it has become quite complicated. There's a lot of factors involved.
When you're looking at how things have changed and looking kind of over the scope of your work and your time working with children and educators, what has changed? We know that the end result here is that we're at least seeing and hearing about more reported cases of students with behavior challenges, behavior conditions, issues. Have you thought about what has changed? Is it just the natural progression of things?
I tell you, if we had hours, I could go on and on. But I'm of the opinion, based on my experience, and I do go local, regional, national periodically. I've gone as far as like Palau, Guam, a little distant there, but there's some universal consistencies that I see. And one of those is a very apparent one, and that's technology. Technology is the greatest gift of the 21st century and the most demonic for the same reason it allows 24/7 access. For whatever reason, in the population of special needs, it has also been that amazing gift in terms of communication, access, entertainment value, all kinds of things. But at the same token, the downside being it has an addictive nature. And that addictive nature has, I believe, complicated things in terms of people being more invested in the screen than face-to-face. The screen is not 3D. The screen doesn't allow you really to interpret emotions. It doesn't allow you to be bored. I really believe the greatest gift we could give our children today would be boredom, because out of that you get innovation and you get dialogue and stuff. And so a lot of that is missing now. We have a lot of changes in the diagnosis of how, like, for example, when I started in deafblind, that was also where you started hearing a lot about attention deficit disorder, for example. Well, that evolved out of what was called PDD, pervasive developmental disorder. So sometimes the criterion shifts, which changes the umbrella of the diagnosis. But with all of that said, at the end of the day, clearly, whatever it is, be it technology, diet, environment, parenting skills, nurture, nature, it doesn't really matter. It's here to stay. It's complicated, and we must evolve into how we respond to these difficult challenges that come to us each and every day. A perfect example is when people say, well, I had a rough year last year, but hopefully this year it won't be as complicated. I told a group of educators recently, autism, for example, is 1 in 36. 1 in 36. So the probability of you crossing paths with children with that diagnosis are very high. It's not a whimsical thing that just passes periodically now and then. So we have to be prepared. And the reality is the only person we have control over is ourselves. So what does that look like and sound like during a complicated demonstration that could interfere with learning, teaching, transportation, etc.?
Fascinating, because we actually, for School Transportation News magazine in our October issue, we're looking at the topic of cell phone use. Mm-hmm. And right now, one of the big headlines across the nation is banning cell phones in classrooms.
Exactly.
And so much of the national conversation around school buses has been what this industry has been saying for a long time, and educators have been saying for a long time, that school bus is an extension of the classroom. Mm-hmm. We also, at the same time, have this big rise in Wi-Fi that's now part of the federal E-rate program that schools can pay up to 80%, I believe, or 90% of that equipment costs. And talking to some student transporters where they're actually engaging their special ed departments to utilize that Wi-Fi for the kids, for the students with special needs and disabilities on the bus, to access tablets and access learning programs, perhaps, that they're doing in the classroom. But at the same time, as you're saying, it's almost like this technology overload. So yes, technology is here and is advanced our society and changed our lives in a lot of positive ways. There's the negatives, just like everything, but it's I hear that it's that need to strike that balance along with most things, right? Finding that balance, because we know technology is here and there's great uses for it, but we can't have an over-reliance on it.
Well, and it's the number one question that I get asked when I do parent meetings and stuff like that is, how do I get my child off the technology? And then I always say, well, before I answer, I want everybody to repeat after me. And I do a countdown and say, I bought it, because the children aren't purchasing the technology. The technology doesn't belong to the children. It belongs to the adults. And the adults have to learn how to set parameters. So it's not about it's a bad thing. It's we've lost sight of how to do really good parameter setting, time limitations, access, and again, who owns the technology? It's the same thing when I have parents say, they've got these challenges with their children and they're overtaxed by their scheduling. And I want to say, well, you make the schedule. The 4-year-old didn't, And so it's really complicated when you start talking about adulting and parenting. I've been in scenarios where I'm not even allowed to say this is a parenting class for fear that the parents will take offense that it's, we're telling them what to do. And I feel really confident about my delivery when I talk to parents, and it's usually extremely well received, because I'm really big on emphasizing we're not going to judge here. This isn't about judgment. When you participate in the conference upcoming in November, I'm going to talk a lot about the human brain and what it is. We're talking to a brain, and what are we going to do with that brain? What does it want? What does it need? And it's really not any different from us. You talked about the bus being an extension of the classroom. I've emphasized that for years, that it's literally a giant desk, that class, that school doesn't end till the minute that child is deposited into the graces of whoever's receiving them on the other end, be it a home or a daycare or an alternate after-school program, that's a continuum. It's all one and the same. So working with campuses on emphasizing that and being respectful of their drivers, honoring their drivers, acknowledging their drivers, visibility of campus staff on the buses, that connection, because I think it falls onto the schools to really make that connection with children, because they're not going to do it on their own. They're just not. They don't see that.
And the importance of collaboration with that, because
yes, absolutely.
With TSD, we see it's a transportation geared event, and transportation geared content and conference and trade show, but we have many attendees who come from the special education departments. Mm-hmm. I would love to see more, frankly. We really have never really advertised to that group, and it's something that has been important for me as we move forward. But physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech pathologists, ASL, like in your experience with students who are deaf, a lot of that collaboration with transportation, because what really the reasoning behind Roseanne creating TSD conference 30 plus years ago, 32 years ago, I think, was getting transportation to be heard.
Yes.
Giving them the tools that they need so that they can engage and be engaged with the different departments, with the different experts, all around that IEP team meeting, right? That's where these decisions are made, and not necessarily does transportation have to attend all these meetings, but they need to have their flag being raised, their banner, and it be seen and condition and collaborate with those different departments, those different entities, so that they don't make these unilateral decisions that they don't know how it's going to impact transportation, or more importantly, the child, right? Because that's what we really want to focus on, is that what we're doing is in the best interest of the student, not necessarily transportation, not necessarily the parents, not necessarily the special ed teacher, but for the students.
Well, and that continuum of the classroom to the bus is also a continuum of the educational component. They're going to have to learn how to ride a bus. So, for example, I remember working with a child who was being transported that had two attendants, the driver and the child, and that was it on the bus. And there was a lot of push-pull, that kind of thing. And I think part of it is making sure that when we train our drivers, when we train our supervisors, and we're receiving information from those other entities who have so much valuable information, that we dialogue in a way that we can implement. A lot of times, like, for example, if I go to a home and I look at a home IEP, I just want to smack my forehead and say, did anybody not look at what this parent has to do from the minute they walk in the door till that child goes to bed? I have a great appreciation for this contribution of expectations, but they don't match what is going to be functional for this parent under these circumstances. And I think it's the same thing for our drivers and such. It's all in the detail, Ryan. It's all in the detail. I remember having a scenario where there was a student, a very tall, large man-child who had autism, who came onto a bus and had an incident where the door got closed, and it was not a good situation. When I watched the video footage and went back, I was in awe how many adult professionals were watching this as a collaborative effort and missed the detail. And so, because we tend to be very reactive, what are we going to do once they escalate into that situation? What they never recognized were the details of the young lady who came on first, who happened to have vocalization challenges. She'd hoot. Well, the newer buses, unlike the old buses, have those high seats, so you can't really see behind you as well as you did in the old days, right? So they put this young lady in who's making all of this noise. And then this young man enters who's highly impacted by that noise. And what happened was, it didn't start loud. Every time a person walked by her to assist another student, she made a vocalization. That vocalization didn't have words, but it had meaning. And when you put meaning to those words, like, who are you? Where are you going? Who's sitting behind me? Or when someone makes a vocalization out of respect, you say, just say something, acknowledge it. And they didn't. So each vocalization got louder. Each vocalization got louder. And then by the time the young man came on, it was so intense, it sent him into an auditory overload, where had they maybe put him on first, the girl last, if they had known something as simple as every time she made a vocalization, make a response like, it is hot in here, or yes, this is so-and-so, she's going to sit behind you. That dignity of communication, we probably could have minimized what happened on the bus. But what you'll see in a report is you have to hold on to the guy or restrain or redirect. What does that mean? That doesn't tell me anything. So I think we need to listen to what our service providers are asking us. And then when we answer in a way that's applicable to their situation, not because it's some foresight that we have that we think is going to make a difference, because it doesn't at the end.
Yeah, everything you're saying, it's I'm thinking to our agenda and going, oh, that she's talking about this session, and she's talking about this breakout session and this keynote. So now, speaking of which, and you've mentioned this several times, dignity.
Yes.
And that's part of the title of your talk on November 8th, de-escalation with dignity. Why don't we? Can you share a little bit more? Because this is going to be a deep dive. So you're going to be providing a keynote welcome, if you will, but we're going to be with you for about 4+ hours. So we're going to really workshop this out. We're going to give attendees a lot of opportunity to work with each other to problem solve.
Yes, absolutely. And I want them to know it sounds like an exhausting amount of time, but I think they're going to find the information so intriguing. There'll be some engagement going on. There'll be points to ponder. There'll be dialogue. I think they'll find that the 4 hours is going to blow by pretty quick. But my quest is to make sure that every person leaves that experience with something that they can actually do. I'm going to have some homework for everybody. They're not only going to be engaged with one another at some point in time, and I don't want to intimidate people who don't like to talk. This isn't going to be a kumbaya fest where we have to go up and do touchy-feely kind of stuff. Don't panic. This is going to be really, really valuable information that I think qualitatively will help them, whether they go back and they're interacting with employees, they have a situation with a parent, they're trying to engage between the school and the transportation department. It's just going to have this array of information and opportunities to walk away, possibly even with a significant other that you have in your household, your own children, somebody who's snippy at your restaurant or your drive-through, because at the end of the day, we're going to really hammer home how important it is to talk and teach to the brain.
Absolutely. And I can attest to the fact of, Joe, you speak with a lot of humor. You're fun. You really make the learning activities just that, an activity. So, and I promise you all, we'll probably throw in a break or two in there for folks to get up and stretch and maybe run and take care of their needs. But really looking forward to it, Joe. And as I was mentioning, hearing you talk, I'm looking at our agenda and going, oh, good, that, we have something on that. Oh, good, we have something on that. And here 2 months out, give or take, there's a couple things that you reminded me of, like, oh, we need to make sure we have this as well. So really looking forward to having you back, Joe. Really appreciate you joining us for a few minutes to talk and share your knowledge and expertise. And folks, if you haven't registered yet, head over to tsdconference.com so you can register and be there on November 8th and the rest of the conference, so you can hear Joe and all of our great experts give their wisdom to you so you can take it back to your operations. Joe, thanks again. Looking forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. Can't wait. Appreciate the opportunity.
A special thanks to Ryan, Joe Mascorro for coming on. Really excited for your keynote at the TSD conference. Can't wait for that. Really excited also for our sponsors this week. Special thanks to TransFinder, Propane Education Research Council, and Zenobi. Guys, don't forget you can listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to pods. Make sure you go to stnonline.com for all the latest news and analysis on the school transportation industry. Go check out that September issue. It's up on the STN website. Great stories in there, all about technology. We got our October issue in the works right now, going to the press next week. So we'll keep you abreast of all that information. We'll have more updates as well as STN Expo East out in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is going to be March 20th through the 25th. More information is going to be coming on that real soon. So keep your eyes peeled for that. STNexpo.com for all the save the dates for next year as you start to budget. And guys, we love you. We'll see you next week. We're looking forward to it. Take care, nation.